In the name of Allah, the Beneficent, the Merciful, I bear witness that there is no God but Allah, who came to us in the person of Master Farad Muhammad, to whom praise is due forever. I bear witness that the most honorable Elijah Muhammad is the exalted and living Christ, now at the right hand of the Savior as Mahdi, and I bear witness that the Honorable Minister Louis Farrakhan is the Messiah in this day of judgment in which we now live. I greet my family with the greeting words of peace and paradise once again. Assalamu alaikum.
Alaikum salam.
How is everyone?
All right, sir.
Let's see.
You?
No complaints, brother, no complaints.
Sir.
Okay. Okay, let's see who we got. Sister Patricia, assalamu alaikum.
Walaikum salam. I came home late and I'm in the midst of cooking dinner, so I might be in and out.
That's fine. That's fine.
I have to feed my grands and they boys, so they be impatient.
Uh-huh. Yes, ma'am. Not a problem. Sister Deborah, assalamu alaikum.
Walaikum salam, sir. How are you this evening?
I'm finding yourself.
I am well by Allah's grace. Happy Savior's Day, family.
Happy Savior's Day. Brother Timothy, assalamu alaikum.
Walaikum salam.
How are you, soldier?
I'm fine. All praise is due to Allah.
Right. And we got Sister Jocelyn, assalamu alaikum.
Walaikum salam.
How are you?
I'm well, thank Allah. And yourself and family?
No complaints, no complaints. No complaints. Okay, we'll give our family a couple more minutes. And while we're doing that, we'll open up the floor. Any questions, any thoughts, any concerns, any suggestions, any corrections regarding anything? The floor is now open for discussion until we get started. Anyone?
Yes, sir. I want to say something.
Mm-hmm.
Sister Patricia here. You know, years ago, I was a movie I was watching. When I say years ago, I think it was like in the 80s. And I can't think of the actor at that time, but he was on this island.
Mm-hmm.
And he was taking humans and animals and going up in the lab and creating this thing.
The island of Dr. Moreau.
Right.
Is that what it was? Because when you said when you talk about Pelan, and I said, I think I heard that name in that movie, and it was some strange stuff that was happening. And I was like, this could be real, you know, to a certain extent, because when you're talking about making a devil, now I know it's not physically, but you know, the mindset is just something to think about. That's what came to my head when I was reading about the island of Pelan. I was like, wow, I remember this movie. You said it was Dr.
It's called The Island of Dr. Moreau, and it was starring Marlon Brando and Val Kilmer.
Yes, Marlon Brando. That's exactly what the actor was. That is correct. I just thought about that. I know I got off track.
That just tells you I watch a lot of movies.
Well,
now I have to go back and I haven't watched that movie in years. I got to go back and watch that now again because I don't remember seeing that, but I'm gonna go watch that movie because there's a lot of similarities, I'm sure, in that.
yes, and that's what made me think about it when I was reading the questions of 27 and 28. I said, "Oh, I mean, I hadn't thought about that movie in years until I read this and it popped up."
Yes,
ma'am. Wow, something to think about. Because you know, sometimes they put truth into movies.
Well, you know what Mother Tainetta Muhammad said about that, right?
No, sir, I don't recall.
She said, and what I will do is I will try to pull up. So I'll try to pull up the article. I'll try to do it real quick before we get started. But she said she had made mention about certain angels, people being in Hollywood, and how they would actually put the truth into the movies. Matter of fact, I'm gonna try to pull it up right now because it may only take me a split second to do it.
Yes, sir. And then, you know, as it said, you know, they talked about it, anything. All we had to do is all they had to do is hide the truth in books because we're not readers, which was incorrect. But, you know, that's how they felt about us.
Okay, I have it right here.
Yes, sir.
It says, it's the title of the article was, "We have come to the end of the old mind and the old world's thinking as we enter the changeover of worlds." And it's a reprint from volume 31, number 51 of the Final Call newspaper. It's dated April 11, 2018. And it says, quote, "In further statements that I remember hearing from the Honorable Elijah Muhammad during table talks, as well as in private discourse, is that there were scientists working in the movie industry in Hollywood who were able to use the medium and technology of films to warn people of events that would soon come to pass. And it is true that many Hollywood films tie into the future events before they actually happen. Many of us moviegoers have witnessed this phenomenon time and time again. One such movie produced by MGM was entitled Lost Atlantis, which verges on the discoveries that are currently being made in the area of the Bermuda Triangle, pointing to a lost Atlantis now being rediscovered." If anyone wants that, I'll send it to you as an email. That way you can actually have it for your own collection. But she said that the information would be in the movies, you know, and if we're awake, we'll see certain things and we'll begin to pick certain things up.
Yes, sir.
Brother Salam, assalamu alaikum.
Thank you.
Alaikum salam, my brother. How you been?
I can't complain, brother.
You
Grateful
see this?
and thankful.
You see this picture behind me?
Yeah, I noticed that, brother.
A good brother of mine, he passed away about a year ago, but he was a famous artist. And he gave me this picture as a gift. And I never knew what the name I should give it. But when I saw that movie last week, The Woman King, I named it Nzinga.
Nzinga. Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Okay, what we got here? We got Sister Tina. Assalamu alaikum, Sister Tina.
Wa alaikum salam, Brother Lukman and family. How are you, Brother Lukman?
Wonderful, wonderful, wonderful. And yourself?
I am wonderful as well. Praise be to Allah.
Praise be to Allah. Sister Durana, assalamu alaikum.
Wa alaikum salam, Brother Lukman. I
How are
just
you?
heard how you're doing.
I'm doing wonderful. I'll be even better when I retire.
All praises to Allah.
I'm looking forward to it. And who do we have on Samsung SM813 6U? You're on mute. Oh, now we got the. Can you hear us? Sister Samsung, can you hear us?
That's her.
I can't hear.
Brother Lukman, that might be my guest.
Okay.
I invited Sister Catherine on.
Okay.
So that might be my guest.
Okay. No problem. No problem. And we have the world famous Sister Shayla, the premier mathematician, scientist.
Assalamu alaikum, everyone.
Alaikum salam.
Alaikum salam.
All right, it's good to see everybody's smiling faces. And we will go ahead. If does anyone have any questions regarding anything we've covered up to this point before we start the new business? Any old business we have to deal with? Are we good to go? All right. So tonight, we are going to deal with, and I'm going to take that off that screen, and I'm going to, I'm like a DJ, I'm going to be operating two screens today. Let's see. Okay, how many people we got? Okay. All right. Can Patmos or Pelan be a demo kit for the reactive mind? This was an idea that came to mind probably some months ago. And I started to kind of let it marinate a little bit. I had wanted to share this before, however, the topics have to come out when it's time and when they're done forming. So I kind of put it on the back burner, and I was able to actually finish it this morning. So basically, we're going to look at our lessons, and we're going to use 2 of the lessons to gain a deeper understanding of the Dianetic tech. In other words, we're going to use one of the lessons from the 1 to 40, or actually 2 of the lessons from the 1 to 40, to give us a deeper insight to the reactive mind and the tech that we're taught in Dianetics, and following in line with what the minister said, to marry the supreme wisdom with the supreme tech. So what is the overall goal? The overall goal is we want to marry the supreme wisdom with the supreme technology. And we know the supreme tech is the science of the mind. And as a result of going deeper into our wisdom, if we can connect the wisdom to the tech, then our supreme wisdom becomes a book for straight wire and auditing on a higher level. Does that make sense?
Yes.
Okay. So the word marry, when you clear the word, basically it means to unite in close and usual permanent relation. It means to combine, and it means to produce agreement. So the goal is to produce what's called ARC between the supreme wisdom and Dianetics. Is there anyone that does not know what ARC means? Okay. And please, if you have any questions, please feel free to stop me at any point and ask your questions. One of the reasons why I produce the PowerPoints is it allows me to answer questions and still stay focused on topic, because I have a bad habit of flying off on these tangents. So I've put it in this format to allow us to address any questions or any thoughts. And keep in mind, there's no dumb question, and every thought is relevant and pertinent, because the thought that you produce might be the solution to someone else's problem. Does that make sense?
Yes,
Yes,
sir.
sir.
Okay. So
But, Brother Lukman,
yes, ma'am.
if that is my guest, Sister Catherine, I'm sure she does not know what ARC is. She was on one of your calls when you were dealing with the Bible scriptures, because she remembered you. She had high things to say about you and how you presented, the class with the Bible, relating it to life. So
Okay.
she does not know what ARC is.
Okay.
Thank you.
Sister Catherine, can you hear me?
I can hear you just fine. I didn't think you could hear me.
I can hear you now.
Oh, well, thank you very much.
Okay.
Thank you.
ARC is a term used by this in the study of Dianetics. It's 3 letters. A stands for affinity, R stands for reality, and then C stands for communication. Okay. So what L. Ron Hubbard did was he took aspects of the mind, and he broke down thought into formula and equations, and he studied the mind the same way a scientist would study creation. Does that make sense?
Yes, it does.
Okay. I might have to close this window. So the A stands for affinity. So I'll give you an example. Affinity means we have an attraction. So everyone in the Zoom meeting has affinity for one another because we're family. So there's things that we have that connect us together. Okay. There's things that bring us close together. So we have an emotional connection. Does that make sense?
Yes.
Okay. That's affinity. Reality means that we are speaking about something that we are in agreement with, and a reality that we share. So when we speak about the Bible, when we speak about truth, when we speak about the way the mind operates, we're speaking about subject matter that we share in common. So we share the same reality. So right now we're in the same room, we're in the same Zoom meeting, so we have the same reality. And then communication means we are speaking in such a way that we are affecting our affinity and affecting our reality.
Okay.
And his goal was, or his thought was, as long as you have at least two, you can produce the third. Okay, so we're in the same room, we have same reality, and we're communication. So the fact that we have those two, we're automatically going to produce affinity. Does that make sense?
Yes.
Okay,
Yes.
so that's what ARC means. You know, back in the day when we were young people, you know, from the brother standpoint, if we saw someone we want to kick it to, the first thing we had to do is we had to first use communication, but we had to find something that we have in common. So we had to find a reality, and then we have to have the right word. And if we can say the right thing and we say it in the right way, then that will give us the affinity. Does that make sense?
Yes.
Okay. And ARC, he says, can be found in everything. You can use ARC with regards to mathematics, physics, chemistry, study, communication between people, how we relate to our children, how we relate to our spouses. That's how we build relationships. It's ARC. So the minister said he wants us to marry the supreme wisdom with the supreme tech. And he also said that what the tech provides us with is the keys to open up the combination of the safe, which is our wisdom, that was full of riches. But now if you're coming from now let me ask you this, are you coming from the Christian standpoint?
Yes.
Okay, so the Bible, give me 1 second. Give me 1 second.
Sure.
My computer fell.
All right. Okay, where was I?
All right. You were asking me what standpoint where I was coming from.
Okay.
The Christian. Yeah.
Okay, so if I think you might be talking about the story of Legion, correct? Did we go through Legion or?
No, you know what? It was a while. You
Or
were
was it Jonah?
the story. It was Jonah.
It was Jonah. Okay.
Yes.
So Jonah, the story of Jonah is like a safe full of riches. But now when we grew up in the church, we always remember the story of Jonah, but we were never able to extract the jewels from it and apply it to our lives so that we could gain something from it.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
So that's what L. Ron Hubbard gives us. He gives us a different way of looking at things so that we can take what we're studying and make it relevant to ourselves individually, so that we're just not quoting the Bible, we're not just quoting the Quran, or we're not quoting our religion. We actually know how to incorporate it into our daily life, and now we know how to live it. Does that make sense?
Absolutely. Yes. Yes. I am coming from a dry place, and it's like a light bulb finally comes on and things are starting to make sense. Yes.
Praise be to Allah. The fact that you are here, I'm going to tweak this presentation a little bit by putting some Bible in there as well.
Thank you very much. Much
No problem.
appreciated.
No
Thank
problem. Who just, we got, let's see, Sister Charlotte, assalamu alaikum.
Walaikum salam.
Glad to have you. And we got Sister Angela. One of the scientists in the house came down from the mothership.
Assalamu alaikum. Happy Savior's Day, everyone. Glad to be here.
Savior's Day. And we got Sister Denise, area code 314 in the house.
Present.
Present and accounted for. And we got Sister Ania. Assalamu alaikum.
Wa alaikum salam.
How are you and the great brother Wahid doing?
We are doing great. Brother just had a birth anniversary yesterday. And so he's resting up today because he expended himself yesterday, but doing great. All praises due to Allah.
So we turned 21?
Something like that, yes, sir.
All right. And I see Sister Roberta's name up, but I just see an empty screen.
Oh, okay. Assalamu alaikum.
Oh, wa alaikum salam.
All is well.
All right. Praise be to Allah. Well, the gangs are here. All right. Now, the objective for tonight. Part one, I'm going to try to get through all the parts tonight. If not, we'll just save some for later. Part one is we're going to look at Lost Found Muslim lesson number 2. We're going to look at question number 27 and we're going to look at 27 and 28. We're going to find ARC between Patmos, Pelan, and the reactive mind. So we will be coming out of the Bible, but like I said, I'm going to tweak it a little bit so we can make sure everyone has a full meal. Give me 1 second. Okay. Then part 2, we're going to look at Lost Found Muslim lesson number 2, question number 28. And we're going to look at the 4 laborers that are spoken about in the lessons. And we're going to see if we can use this lesson allegorically or from the perspective of metaphor to see if those 4 laborers can be seen within the individual. In other words, we're going to use this lesson to describe the elements of the reactive mind. Does that make sense?
Yes.
Okay. And then we're going to see if we can find these 4 demons or devils, as we call them, find these devils within ourselves. Hopefully we can get through all 3, but if not, don't worry about it. Okay. So part 1, the place where the devil is manufactured. Can everyone see that picture?
Yes.
Okay. Now, Sister Catherine, I'm gonna give a biblical as well as a Quranic explanation for this picture.
Okay.
We've been taught, there's a book called Closing the Gap. And in Closing the Gap, the Honorable Minister Louis Farrakhan speaks about Master Fard Muhammad and said that he would teach individuals the way you teach children, and that's through the use of pictures. And that the picture doesn't represent, the picture is not the truth, but the truth is contained in the picture. And the more that you dig into the picture, the more truth you will find. Okay?
Yes.
From the perspective of the Holy Quran, we're taught about what's called the whispering of the slinking devil who whispers into the hearts of men. So from the Quranic standpoint, the devil is a voice. The devil is a voice that exists in our mind that speaks to us, not in a spooky way, but it's just something within ourselves that directs us to go in directions that we don't need to go. Does that make sense?
Yes. Yes.
Okay. When you look at that same concept, here's where there's ARC between the Holy Quran and the Bible. The Bible gives a symbolism like this. And this is one of the ways that I understood it as I study. I'm a firm believer that whenever we study and we gain understanding, it's not because we are so wise. It's because the God that we serve is with us and gives us his understanding. Can we accept that? Can we agree with that? Okay. So when we study with the right intention, then God will bless us with the understanding. And that's where the understanding comes from. That's like a gift from God. Okay. Now let's look at this story from the biblical standpoint and see if it makes sense. Now, I think we might have just spoken about this last week, but we'll cover it again now. When Jesus was tempted in the wilderness for 40 days, it said that he was in the wilderness and Satan was with him, correct?
Yes.
Okay. And it said that Satan came and spoke to him when he was hungry. Okay. And then there was 3 trials that Satan put him through. The first trial was, he told Jesus, turn these stones to bread. Jesus said, man shall not live by bread alone, but by every word that proceedeth out the mouth of God. Satan tried to tempt him the second time and said, cast yourself off the temple, lest God will send his angels and catch you before your feet dash among the stones. Jesus said, thou shalt not tempt the Lord thy God, correct?
That's right.
Okay. The third trial was Satan took Jesus up to the top of a great mountain and showed him everything. It says, if you bow to me, I'll let you have all of this. And that's when Jesus said, get thee behind me, Satan. And it was after that, if we look in the scripture, it was after that happened that his mission started, when he started to preach. Does that make sense to everyone?
Yes.
Okay. Now that story is allegorical, and we go through it all the time, but 9 times out of 10, we don't pass the 3 tests. Now here's how we make the test personal. Part number 1, turn the stones to bread. Can we eat stones?
No.
We can't eat stone, right?
No, sir.
No,
But
sir.
we can eat bread, right?
Correct.
Okay. So turning stone to bread, to me, now this is the way I perceive it. Turning stone to bread means when you take things that you know you have no business doing and then you justify doing it.
Mm.
Okay. So before we can sin, before we fall victim to our low desires, we first have to justify it in our mind. We have to turn stone to bread. Does that make sense?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay. And I always use myself as an example. Even though we're supposed to do 1 meal a day and we're supposed to eat between 4 and 6, oftentimes when I'm at work, I snack. And my justification is, for those that don't know, I work for the fire department. My justification is, if we get a fire later on, I have to have my energy. Therefore, I justify eating when I'm not supposed to. Does that make sense?
Yes.
Yeah, that's deceptive intelligence.
I'm using deceptive intelligence. I'm making evil fair seeming. In the language of Christianity, I am turning stone to bread. I'm justifying doing what I know I have no business doing.
Okay.
Okay. Some of us, we say, I haven't done such and such and such a long time. And, God is going to forgive me. And God says that none is perfect but the Lord. And all our righteousness is as filthy rags in the eyes of the Lord. And since God is going to forgive me, so we justify doing stuff we have no business doing. Does that make sense?
Yep. Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Yes.
So that's allegorical language for turning stone to bread. So first, sin has to be justified in our mind. But then what happens? Now you have to put yourself in the right environment in order for sin to come in fruition.
Mm-hmm.
So sometimes we put ourselves in places we know we have no business doing, and we say, God is going to protect me. No, God protects you by telling you not to go there to begin with.
Yes.
Okay. So we put ourselves in environments we have no business going into. We put ourselves around people that we shouldn't be around. Because persons, places, and things are those things when they connect with the thought. If we've justified the thought, then we justify the location. Does that make sense?
Yes.
So, I'm striving to get a hold of my diet, but I'll go to the store and get a thing of Breyer's ice cream. I have to justify it in my mind. Now I got to go to the store and get it. Does that make sense? Some of y'all can't drive by this. If you see the hot sign on, you can't drive past the hot sign without stopping and getting your Krispy Kreme, right? Okay. Now, Krispy Kreme might not be your weakness, but everyone in here has something that they fall victim to, correct?
Correct.
Okay. So that place that we all go to connect with the thought, that's the place we go to now give birth or give rise to doing the things that we know we shouldn't be doing.
Let me ask a question.
Go ahead, Brother Salam.
Could it be out of addiction instead of desire? You're addicted to something?
It could be. It could be. It could be an addiction, because now we deal with Dianetics, we're dealing with compulsions, we're dealing with addictions. But now, a doctor by the name of Gabor Mate, when you deal with addictions, he gets to the root of it. He says addiction is not the problem.
Correct.
He says addiction is a solution that a person used with a problem that they couldn't find a solution to. So when you look at our addictions, and we all have them to certain degrees, it's based on something that happened in our childhood. And the way he would portray it, he would say, like right now, if I said something that we all didn't like, we could either respond or we could leave the Zoom meeting, correct?
Correct.
Okay. But when something happens to a child, they can't speak against the parent and they can't leave the house. So the child is in an environment that's negative toward the child, and the child has to endure it because the child can't leave.
That's a good
now
point.
that child grows up to be an adult that's aberrated, but that aberration is based on something that happened to the child when they were growing up.
Yes.
So what happens is we still have that characteristic as an adult, but we don't know, excuse my language, we don't know what the hell it is. We know something's wrong, but some of the stuff that's wrong, we don't know what it is. We know certain things happen in our childhood, but there's some things that we don't know. We just know that something's not right with us. Does that make sense?
Yes, sir.
Yes.
Someone can say something or do something, we fly off the handle and we don't even know why we cussed them out. Correct?
Yeah.
Correct.
Okay, so we have these things. So now, because of the things that we suffer from now, we either use food, we use alcohol, we use drugs, whatever it is that we use as a solution to a problem that we don't have a solution to. So yes, sir, Brother Salam, we do deal with addiction, but the addiction is not the problem. The problem is we have unresolved issues from our childhood.
Correct.
Go ahead, Sister Angela.
Yeah, I was having a problem on muting. Brother Lamar, turn your phone down. Okay, I had a question about, can you give me the definition or the meaning you gave for addiction?
You mean the one that I just gave?
Yes, I just found my pen, so I wanted to write it down.
Okay. And remind me, I'll put in the link of the actual video. There's a 9-minute video you can watch on YouTube where he breaks this whole thing down perfectly. It's the best explanation I've ever had. But he says addiction is not the problem. He says addiction is a solution that was used for a problem when we could not find a solution.
Wow, praise be to Allah. Thank you.
So, you know, right now, the thing that I wrestle with is my diet, because, and this is not a justification nor is an excuse, but I had a couple years ago, I had a near-death experience on the job, and it did affect me, and I did have to go to counseling for it. And I think one of the reasons why I snack a lot at work is because the job itself produces anxiety, and snacking is one of my ways of dealing with it. Again, not justifying it, not coming up with an excuse. I just have to accept things as they are. This is one of the devils that I have to murder in myself. Does that make sense?
Yes.
Okay, so that still affects me. I've been burned in a fire. That still affects me. I've had my back injured in a fire. That still affects. So I got all that, which is why I'm ready to retire, because I got all this stuff that's happening.
Mhm.
And that is a part of what I battle with. So the last part, Satan takes him to the top of the mountain and says, if you bow, I'll give you all of this. Okay.
Mhm.
So now there's three things. It's like sin has a cycle of action. The first thing is we have to justify it in our mind. Minister Farrakhan called that deceptive intelligence. Okay. That's the start of the cycle. We have to justify it in our own mind. The second part is we have to put ourselves in the location in order for the sin to come into existence. And the third thing is we actually have to choose to commit the sin. So we can have a sinful thought, we can put ourselves in a location, but then we say, you know what, let me get out of here. I'm not doing this. How many of us have ever had the thought, put ourselves in a place we say, you know what, let me leave. I gotta get out of here. Has anyone ever experienced that?
Yes.
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir.
Okay.
Yeah.
So we were able to, even if we can't get the first two, at least we can conquer that third one.
Mhm.
I believe, this is just me, I believe that Jesus was tempted many times and perhaps he didn't pass the test. And this final time he passed it. And that's what we remember. We remember, and we have the example of him in the wilderness, because Satan usually comes when we're hungry. Satan usually, and I'll give you another example. Last week I decided I was going to fast for the day and I went to work. Lo and behold, I get to work. There's a big tray of brownies and half a thing of ice cream in the freezer. So the verse comes to mind that says, do men think they'll be left alone on saying they believe and will not be tried?
Oh, my poor brother.
And Brother Lukeman didn't pass that. He didn't pass that one. he turned stone. He turned stone to bread that day. Go ahead, Sister Angela.
Yes, sir. While you were speaking, I was thinking about the minister's instructions to us of the last fire of temptation being one of the last trials is going to be hard. That's like Satan traveling, being a companion all the way up to the highest point. And when he was saying and showing Jesus everything that he thought he owned, Satan, he said, all this can be yours. So it was a material temptation, just like, brownies that sound good right about now. Brownies and ice cream can be, or finances could be, luxuries can be. So I thought about how the minister said he called the fire, and immediately thought about the jinn. The fiery spirit in us sometimes, where when we up to that third one and making a choice because we already justified it. I mean, I could get a Mercedes too. I should have a Mercedes too, by any means necessary. And then we have the location. Maybe we know somebody to know somebody, but it's something shady in it. I'm just, making it up. Now that it's there and it's in our face and it's just ready for the picking, is where the fire for me, it seems to get hot. When we have to deal with that strong desire and that fiery temptation of the jinn.
Mm-hmm.
So I just want to say that.
A brother told me years ago, he says, how can you tell when God is giving you something and Satan is giving you something? And he said, when Satan gives you something, there's always a string attached. So if we make God our focus, then we can get the same things, but there's no strings attached. If we go over here with Satan, he'll give us whatever we want, but then down the road, if we don't follow what he wants us to follow, there's a string. He can always take back what he gave us. Does that make sense?
Mm-hmm.
And this is why people are jumping off bridges and jumping off buildings, because their focus is their wealth and not the creator, not God. Because you can't take God from someone. That's the one thing a person can have. No one can take that. So I remember when they said this to the Most High Elijah Muhammad, they said I'm paraphrasing, they can take this and take that. He says, all this, you know, you can take all this. He said, but me, you can't have. Has anyone ever heard that before?
Yeah, I heard it.
Yes.
Okay.
Sir.
So now Dianetically, L. Ron Hubbard stated, if there ever was a devil, he designed the reactive mind. And we had made a note that this was on page 64 of Dianetics. So the interesting thought behind the number 64 is that there's 64 hidden years where they took the slave from Africa and made the slave. So really, you have the slave trader, Sir John Hawkins, who got the slaves in 1555. You have the slave owners that lived in North America and were taught that slavery started in 1619. But the history books never talk about the slave maker down in the Caribbean that had our ancestors for 64 years, which was really another type of Pelan. Does that make sense?
Yes.
Oh.
Absolutely.
So the Caribbean was another type of Patmos where they produced another reactive mind in us. And it took 64 years. Okay. L. Ron Hubbard states that this is the mind which keeps war a thing of alarm, which makes politics irrational, which makes superior officers snarl, which makes children cry in fear of the dark. He says, this is the mind which makes a man suppress his hopes, which holds his apathies, which gives him irresolution when he should act, and kills him before he has begun to live. So when we look at all of this in this room have had great ideas, great thoughts, we've had dreams, and we have aspirations. How many of us have killed our own dreams?
A lot of times.
Lots of times.
How many of us have made excuses why we shouldn't do something?
Lots of times.
Okay. So we all suffer from this reactive mind. The Bible says it like this: you are all God's children of the Most High God. That's Psalms 81. I think it's Psalms 81. I could be wrong. So we're all children of God. That means there's nothing that we can't do. We should be able to say be and it is. Not abracadabra. But if we have a thought, we should be able to manifest that thought into reality, because we are direct descendants from the Creator. Does that make sense?
That's right.
But we either are our own worst enemy, or we make excuses. Well, I didn't do this because you did this and you did this. How many of us have done that? We pointed at other people why we didn't accomplish anything.
That's right.
Okay.
Definitely.
L. Ron Hubbard says that when you make excuses, that means you give power to other people. So when you say the other person is the cause, then you're also saying that you are effect. So if I'm not getting things done because of you, that means I have no strength, I have no power, I have no authority. Then we can't say I can do all things through Christ that strengtheneth me. Does that make sense?
Perfect.
He didn't say you can do some things through Christ that strengthens him. He said you can do all things. So whatever we put our mind to, because when we put our mind to doing negative things, don't we manifest the negative with no effort?
Absolutely.
That means we can do the same thing on the positive side.
Brother Lukman,
Yes, sir, Brother Salam.
give more elaboration on the reactive mind.
Oh, brother, this whole Zoom meeting is reactive mind. Brother, when I get done with this, God willing, there's not going to be no question about the reactive mind. We're going deep into the reactive mind.
Okay.
Yes, sir. So then he says on page 65, if there ever was a devil, he invented it. So our reactive mind right now, part of it was manufactured in that 64 hidden years. Does that make sense?
Mm-hmm.
Because one thing he also says in Dianetics, in Sister Catherine,
Yes.
you can be a student of the Bible and still read Dianetics, because Dianetics is not religion, it's science.
Okay.
Okay. Do you have a Bible?
Yes, I do.
Well, no, I shouldn't ask that. Of course you have a Bible. Which version do you have?
I have the King James. Actually, I have a couple.
Okay.
I have the King James version though.
Okay, do me a favor.
Yes.
You got your King James version handy?
I sure do.
Can you open up to 1 Timothy?
Absolutely.
Open up to 1 Timothy. go to chapter 6 and look at verse number 20.
Okay, 1 second. I'm not there. 1 second. I'm getting. Okay, 1 Timothy.
Chapter 6.
Okay.
Verse 20.
All right, I'm there.
Can you read that for me?
O Timothy, keep that which is committed to thy trust, avoiding profane and vain babblings, and oppositions of science falsely so called.
See, anything that opposes science, you're supposed to avoid it.
Okay.
Okay. Vain and profane babblings is when people talk about stuff that makes no sense. Okay.
Okay.
So when you have the science, see, science goes along with religion. Okay. Now go to the book of Daniel.
All right.
Go to the book of Daniel.
One second. I'm sorry. My pages are a little sticky here. Forgive me.
Well, that means you've been that means you've been using it.
1 second. I'm sorry. Daniel. Trying to get there quick. I'm so sticky.
Brother Luke, when in the book of Timothy, is they saying to avoid science?
No, avoid oppositions to science.
Oh, okay. Okay.
Yeah. It's saying avoid opposition to science. So anything, and then there's another one. It's 1 Thessalonians 5 and 12, I think. It says, prove all things and hold fast to that which is good.
Yes.
Whatever you teach, you got to be able to prove it.
You know what? I want to apologize. I cannot. 1 second.
No, we'll keep going, and then let me
Okay.
know when you find it.
Okay, here's Daniel. Okay, and then what? Where in Daniel am I looking?
Look in chapter 1 where it talks about. Read chapter 1, verse 4.
Okay, chapter 1, Daniel, verse 4. Children in whom.
Yes. Okay. Back up to verse 3. Yes, that's where we are.
All right. And the king spake unto
Ashpenaz,
the master of his eunuchs, that he should bring certain of the children of Israel, and the king's seed, and of the prince, children in whom was no blemish, but well favored and skilled in all wisdom, and cunning in knowledge, and understanding science.
There you go.
And such as had ability in them to stand in the king's palace.
There we go.
And whom they might teach the learning and the tongue of the Chaldeans.
Yeah.
Okay. So what the Bible is telling us is, because some of the information is prophetic. So we have to look at the fact that the children of Israel, which is us, because it said, no, of a surety your seed will be lost in the land that's not theirs, and they'll be there for 400 years. We are the children of Israel. We are the authors of mathematics and science, but that knowledge was taken from us. Now it's time for us to take back our rightful place. But one of the things that we have to do, we have to qualify for that. We have to study. From the standpoint of the Bible, it's saying that avoid profane and vain babblings and oppositions to science. We have to become scientists now. We have to understand that when they came with arguments with Jesus, they could never defeat his arguments, could they?
No.
Okay, because Jesus was skilled in the sciences.
Wow.
So now our lessons say, question number 27. What was the name of the place where he manufactured the devil? Now, in these lessons, these are like formula or equations that can teach us into Christianity, Islam, Buddhism, whatever the faith tradition is. These represent principles that are applicable across the board with everything. Our lessons fulfill the religious thought. Does that make sense?
Yes.
Yes.
Sir.
Yes.
Okay. So the answer is Pelan, the same that is called Patmos in the Revelations, chapter 1, 9th verse, an island that is situated in the Aegean Sea. So Patmos and Pelan are two names that are really describing the same place. Okay. Now, I'm gonna go to Google Maps for a quick second and show you where Patmos is.
Is it by Turkey?
Yes, it is, Brother Salam.
All right.
Yes, it is. Okay, can you see my screen?
Yes.
Okay, so you see Africa?
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
I do.
Let's go in a little closer. Go a little closer. See where Greece is?
Yes.
See? Yes.
Okay.
Turkey.
Now we're going a little further. You see Athens on your left.
Yep.
You go a little further, you keep going, you keep going, you keep going, you keep going, you come to Patmos. That's Pelan in the Aegean Sea.
Mm.
So he went to that island, but there's a lot of islands. He went to Patmos Island. There's a lot of islands around there.
Right, and this right here, this whole piece is one island. That's Patmos.
Brother Luqman, how old is this map?
This is on Google Maps, so this has to be up to date and recent.
Wow.
Bring
It's
it
still,
back.
Patmos and Pelan is still there.
Patmos.
Still there. Okay.
Bring the map back down. Bring it back down. Let me see.
So it's right there off the coast of Greece and right over by Bulgaria and Turkey. Turkey is right there.
Turkey.
It's off the coast of Turkey.
Yes. Okay.
So it's a little history lesson. Now we all know where Patmos is.
So next to Istanbul is close. Okay. I didn't know that.
Yes.
Huh.
All right. Okay. It's 13 square miles.
Mm.
Now the word place means a physical environment. So we're talking about a place where the devil was manufactured. It means a step in a sequence on the time track. Now, in Dianetics, everything that we've done over the course of our life, L. Ron Hubbard calls it a time track. And everything we've done is recorded. And this is why there's certain parts of our life we can remember. There's certain parts of our childhood we can remember. Unfortunately, there's certain parts of our childhood that we cannot remember, correct?
Yes.
Correct.
Okay.
Yes.
So our time track, what he's saying is when you take a time track, the gaps where those areas are where you and I do not remember, those represent areas where something happened to us and our analytical mind was shut off and our reactive mind recorded it, but we can't remember because our brain is set up in such a way to protect us from extremely painful situations. Does that make sense?
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Give an example. Give an example.
Has anyone ever been in a car accident?
Yes.
And in that car accident, right before the accident and into the accident, there's certain parts that you just don't remember?
Yep. Yes, absolutely.
Okay. When I was in the explosion that I was in, there's a point I remember up to a certain point, and then there's a gap. And then when I came to, I mean, I don't think I was unconscious, but I went from a standing position and then I was lying face down on the ground, and there's a gap of time there that I can't remember. Okay. When we're injured, something happens, the analytical mind shuts off, the reactive mind turns on. So the recording is still taking place. Then when you come to, the reactive mind shuts off and the analytical mind turns back on again, but you can't remember what was recorded over here.
Right.
So in Dianetics, and those gaps where we can't remember, those gaps hold what's called circuits. So if someone said something at that time period, it was recorded in your mind, but you don't remember it. However, there are times when you might just out of the blue say things to yourself. You might say, "Oh, you ain't about nothing." And then you get down on yourself and you don't realize that that was a recording of what someone else said to you when you were a child. Does that make sense?
Yes.
Okay. So we have these recordings in our mind, and we become our own greatest obstacle, not realizing that someone else inserted that in our mind. English lesson number C1 kind of says it like this. Why does he fear now that he's a grown man? Because he was taught to eat the wrong food when he was a baby. Does that make sense?
Yes.
Okay. So you can take any characteristic that we carry now that's negative and ask the question, well, why do I do this now? Because somehow this happened to me when I was a child. Does that make sense?
Yes.
Okay. And I'll give you one quick example. Think of children that are in a house with an abusive parent. And let's say the abusive parent, was an alcoholic. And if the children interrupted the parent would come into the room and just start beating the hell out of everybody. So the children learn that we have to speak really, really quiet. And if we speak quiet, Dad won't hear us. So as long as we're quiet, he won't do anything. So these children use speaking quiet as a survival mechanism for that point in time, correct?
Correct.
Good point.
Now you take that same child who becomes an adult and people say, brother, sister, why you always speak so quiet? And they said, I don't know, that's just the way I am, that's just the way. So now as an adult, we could say, well, why is he quiet now? Or why is she quiet now? Because he or she was taught to be quiet when they were a child. So we carry these behaviors as adults that look like aberrations. They look like compulsions. There's certain things we do now that are compulsive. They are addictions, but they were what we used to survive when we were teenagers. Some of us started drinking when we were teenagers. First time I had a drink, I think I was 12 years old. So we carry these things through life. And then as an adult, there's certain behaviors we still have now, but it comes from our childhood. Does that make sense?
Yes, sir.
Okay, go ahead, Sister Shayla.
For those that are not very familiar with Dianetics, sometimes the aberration, because when things are happening to us in our childhood, there's pain involved. We kind of see things that are really, that's not how it happened. But because we are making decisions based on 7, 8, 10, 12, whatever age, let me give you an example. What that mean? For example, I always thought my mother wanted to kill me. I truly believe this, and I couldn't figure out why would a mother wants to kill her child. I injured, my parents told me don't do something, and I did it. I jumped over the fence and I split my I don't know what you call it, the bone between the knee and the foot. I split it.
The tibia and the fibula.
Mi tibia en español. So the blood was just like you open a hose and you put a ridge in it. That's not a ridge, but something that make it splatter. And I can see my mother saying, I can't hear what she was saying, but I can see, I didn't see fright. I just saw an angry woman. And when I got to her, I was covered in blood, and she grabbed me and she said, didn't I tell you, don't go there, sit here. And she put me on the step, but how it occurred for me, she threw me on the steps and she came out with kerosene And I thought when I was 7, oh my God, she wants to kill me. She wants to burn me. And my mother poured kerosene on my wound. I stopped. But in that moment, what I made up, she changed her mind. Now that I'm not bleeding, she's not going to strike the match. She never was going to strike a match. But I made that up in that moment. I didn't see the reality of that's how she cauterized the injury and stopped the bleeding. And then she wrapped it in some type of leaf, people in the country does, and it was fine. But I walked around thinking the next opportunity that I misbehave, my mother's going to kill me. She won't kill me by fire this time, but she'll kill me a different way. And that's a heavy load to carry as a child. That's not what happened. But until I did Dianetics, I saw exactly what happened. She was upset because I did hurt myself, and her first reaction was run inside, get the kerosene, pour it on my leg. It stopped the bleeding, which was the objective of that. But in my little mind, I made it, my mother wants to kill me. So I just wanted you all to understand that everything that you see in Dianetic, that you see on your track, is not always what was done to you, but what actually really happened. And because you was in pain, you was frightened, you gave a lot of meaning to all the actions taking place. And I think it was important. So you don't go into Dianetics thinking, I'm only going to find bad things, because finding that engram was a big deal for me. A big deal. That's it.
No, thank you, Sister Shayla, because that's very relevant. The main thing is when you go into your past, you're gonna find out the reason why certain things, and that's what releases you from the pain of that situation. Because
correct,
some of us carry around assumptions, and for some of us, we've been wrong about ourselves and we've been wrong about other people for 10, 20, 30 years. And then once we find the truth, we say, oh man, you mean it was only that?
That's all it was.
It's such a relief. It's like a weight being lifted off.
Absolutely.
So praise be to Allah. Sister Angela, go ahead.
Yes, sir. Thank you, sister, for sharing. Absolutely powerful. And I was on the one of the islands as you were talking in the manufacturing plant, and I recalled when I got very limited data and marry that with some type of pain or discomfort and making a snap judgment, and that judgment becoming a command in Dianetics, right? So Sister Shayla said she believed her mother wanted to kill her, and that became a command.
Mm-hmm.
And it didn't stop with your mom. I'm just gonna, because you just reminded me of one I manufactured on my island with the limited information I had, my only perspective, my point of view, mixed with the emotional. Now it's been, because you have emotional trauma attached to your pain also, sister. And a lot of us don't see that. Sometimes we just look at a physical pain, but the emotional trauma was that is kind of what helps us make this judgment. The reactive mind is totally at play because now we got physical pain, we have emotional pain, and now because the reactive mind is picking up all available data that we don't even realize is picking up, everything connected to that recording is going to make us feel like, for yourself, my mother's trying to kill me. For myself, it was my mother doesn't care about me. She don't want me. And it was because I had very limited data. So if to help those that are not really familiar with the technology, we can see, one, knowledge is truly power. The more you know, the more rational a decision that you can come up with. And the power of going back and running these memories, or even sometimes it could be something that happened earlier today that upset us. If we can go back, if depending on how clear we are with our precepts, If you can go back and look at it without the emotion attached to it, I'm sure you're going to pick up something that you didn't see earlier. So thank you for sharing. Absolutely beautiful. And you helped me get on my island. Praise be to Allah.
Salam. Praise be to Allah. All right. Well, before we go any further, I didn't see you at first, but I see Brother Mar snuck in on me. Assalamu alaikum, Brother Mar.
He's washing his hands. He's in there cooking.
Okay, that's fine.
He sent the greetings.
All right, Chef Lamar's in there. All right, no problem. So when we go back on our time track, we come to particular moments or points in time. Place also means the position of a figure in relation to others of a row or series. So at these points in time where these events took place, 9 times out of 10, there's a person that's going to be there at that place. Does that make sense?
Can you explain that one more time, brother?
Yes. If we go back on the time track, and you go back to either times when we were injured, moments of unconsciousness, okay, because that's your engram, and then you have what's called your secondary. That's the emotion that's connected to it. 9 times out of 10, you're going to find a person at that point of the injury, because one of the main problems we have is the creation of the circuit. The circuit is the voice in our head, and that comes from an individual from our past that said certain things during a time of emotional pain or discomfort. Does that make sense?
Yes, sir.
Yes, it does.
Yes,
Does you answer question, Sister Shayla?
No. You come clear.
Huh?
No, I'm clear.
Okay.
Thank you.
Because there was something that you said when you said sit right here. That's an engrammic command.
Correct.
Okay. Now here's something that popped on my head a while ago. But when you look at the physical surroundings, okay, the word place also means atmosphere. Okay. Now, what do you see in the word atmosphere?
Patmos.
Patmos here. Just take the thing, put it in the front. Patmos here. So Patmos is not just a location on the Aegean Sea. Patmos can be in our household. Patmos can be at work. Patmos can travel with us when we're going from point A to point B. What I want to put forth with the help of Allah is that this mind right here could represent Patmos. Does that make sense?
Yes.
Okay,
I get it.
we have a physical Patmos, but then we could have a mental Patmos. Okay. So the question is produced, could Patmos or Pelan represent any place that produces devils? Now, that's true, then we could say that Patmos is just an allegorical representation of any environment that produces devils. Does that make sense?
That makes sense.
Okay. So now, as we take this walk, as we all walk around the islands that we live on, you might go back on your time track, you might see certain people, certain locations, certain things that happen. Certain things, obviously, we don't want you to share. But if you have any cognitions, like Sister Shayla and Sister Angela, if you come up with anything that you're willing to share, by all means, because what you share might help another person regain part of their analytical mind back. Does that make sense? Okay.
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir.
Go ahead, Sister Angela.
Yes, sir. I had to just share this really quick. Okay. Thank you. So, closing the gap, I heard you mention it earlier tonight, right? And one of the questions that something that we hear that we will not see the kingdom of heaven unless we come as a little child. And as you were talking and we on this manufacturing island, I always found it interesting that we don't audit until the child is 9 years old or after 9 years old. And I think Sister Shayla she kind of gave me the answer, because I can even go in my mind and see when those earlier engrams took place, I purposely ran them myself. You understand what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
I didn't have to have the feeling of, anxiety. I named it. Like she said, my mother's trying to kill me. So it wasn't something so far from my consciousness. I could pull it like, oh yeah, this is what you're trying to do to me. Or I know why you're doing X, Y, and Z. It's because of this. And I'm wondering if there's a connection to that. At one point, is the reactive mind not so powerful after we turn a certain age? Just wanted to throw that out there.
That's a good question. You're saying the reactive mind may not be as strong when we're children?
Absolutely, because I remember going into my mind as a child, especially before 9. As you know, that's a definitive number for me. I can recall not having to have some subtlety that remind me of a painful event. I could bring it up in a snap and run it and tell a person this is exactly why I feel like it. Because even though I may not have all available data, I still had access to the memory.
I'll respond to your statement like this. Everyone that's here has a computer, correct?
Yes, sir.
If you don't have a laptop, then you have a cell phone.
Right.
Everyone here has a cell phone or a laptop computer. Does it run as fast as the day that you bought it?
No. Absolutely not.
What has changed between the day that you bought it and today?
Storage.
You have used up storage. You've got other programs running in the background as you're using it. And some of us have malware or viruses on the computer that's slowing down the processor, that displaces the files. It interrupts, it slows down the processor. Take a child. A child hasn't lived long enough to have all this other garbage entered into their mind. So their processors are very, very quick. This is why a child, they can do math and science and they pick things up so fast because their processor is fairly new. They still have a lot of storage and they don't have a lot of malware and viruses and programs on their computer. Does that make sense?
Absolutely.
And I'm talking about their mind now. So now as adults, we got so many viruses and malware and different stuff floating around in our mind. We can barely do simple things now, because whenever we try to do something, some of us have experienced this. You try to take a class, but we're trying to do something for ourselves, but at the same time, we're still trying to figure out how am I going to get the rent paid? How am I going to get the car note paid? I got to get groceries in the house. I got to get this done. I got to get this done. Our mind is traveling in 20 different directions. So it's hard for us to get all that focus onto one thing at a time. Does that make sense?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Children don't have to worry about that.
Brother Lukman, you know what? You made me think about the retention I asked you about last week as one of the reasons why the retention slowed down.
Yes, ma'am. Yes, ma'am. I was playing in a chess tournament years ago, and at the end of the game, I sat down with the person I played against. He was, I think, around 60, and we were talking about how children, they can pick up chess so fast and so quick. I said, yeah, we're sitting here playing this tournament. I said, but while we're trying to focus on the game, you and I are still focused on, I got to be to work on Monday. I got to get this paid. We have other things going on in the back of our mind. It takes us more effort to focus on the game because we have other stuff. Children, all they worry about is getting back to the room and eating their snacks and playing the video. They ain't got all this other stuff to think about.
Right.
As adults, we have responsibilities, and these are things that slow down our processing speed, the speed of our thought. Okay. The meaning, Patmos and Pelan. The word Patmos actually means it's a place of exile for convicts. Okay. Convict is an individual that is that's supposed to be serving. It's saying no matter how many times I go through these PowerPoints, there's always one that slips through. Is serving a prison sentence. Conviction means the state of being convinced. In Latin, it comes from the word convincere, which means to refute, to convict, to prove. Now, to bring as by argument to belief, consent, or a course of action. Now, here's a question for us. How many of us either carry around certain beliefs about ourselves, or we used to carry around certain beliefs about ourselves that we were nothing, no one, wouldn't amount to nothing, wouldn't be nothing? How many of us have those thoughts in our mind?
Yes, sir.
Okay. We might not have them now, but some periods throughout the day, do we run into those thoughts in our mind that make us second guess ourselves?
Absolutely.
Yes, sir.
So we believe that there's certain things that we cannot do.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Yes, sir.
So we are convicted that we are less than who we really are. Is that a good, safe assumption?
Mm-hmm. Yes,
Yes,
sir.
yes,
So would that not be a place of exile?
Yes, sir.
yes.
And
Yes, sir.
if we have a low self perception of self, wouldn't that be like serving a prison sentence?
Mm-hmm. Yes, sir.
So wouldn't that be like the island of Patmos or Pelan in our own mind?
Mm-hmm. Yes, sir.
Okay. And the lower part of ourself overcomes the upper part of ourself, meaning there's certain things we want to do, and then there's another voice that says you can't do it. You ain't got the time, you ain't got the money, you ain't smart enough, you ain't pretty enough, you ain't got this, you ain't got that. So what happens is we listen to that other voice that talks us out of growing into the God that we need to grow into. Does that make sense?
Yes, sir.
Okay. So everyone's on their island right now. Hopefully by the end of the day, we'll get off this island.
Brother Lookman, sometime I have to say, get out of my head. You don't pay
Yes.
rent.
Yes.
You're
Yes.
not well, because it's so, the physiology start to change. I noticed that immediately, that I have to like talk myself and remind me, no, I used to be average. I'm on my godship. I'm in my internship for my godship here. So just leave me alone.
Mm-hmm.
I keep going.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
It's strong.
If you could read my thought bubble, there are some days when these weird thoughts come out of nowhere, and I have to say to myself, will you leave me alone? Good thing no one's around, because they would think that I'm talking to someone. It's like, where did that thought come from?
It happens.
But remember, the Bible says what? I think it's the book of Romans, chapter 7. It talks about the law of my members at war with the law of my mind. And then if you look at the book of, I think it's the book of John, it talks about the double-minded man is unstable in all his ways. So we have this war that's going back and forth in our mind every day. Does that make sense?
Yes.
Some days we win and some days we don't.
You don't.
In the Holy Quran, in chapter 7, verse 200 and 201, it says, when an evil thought assaults thy mind, seek refuge in Allah. So Allah is letting us know there's thoughts that's going to come into our mind that's not ours.
Mm-hmm.
But it comes into our mind. Allah don't want us to entertain it, but seek refuge in Him to overcome it.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Brother Lookman,
Yeah, go ahead, Sister Denise.
I was, the question came, why does he fear now? Since he put fear in us when we were children. Why does he fear? He's not a child anymore. But why does that happen years ago? And it's still the same thing, because I can understand why when I hurt myself, why my mother would hit me after I hurt myself. And I mean, I was, you know, she was like, why you hurt? And then she would hit me. I would look at it and I said, why you hit me? You know, I'm already hurt. Why you, I'm hitting you because you hurt yourself. Yeah, but I'm hurt worse. You hit me. You know, I'm not saying she had issues, but she sure did have a problem with me. You know, you shouldn't hurt yourself. So you gonna hit me? That was the insane conversation me and my mother had. You know, you let that window down on your head. No, I didn't. I mean, if I had the choice, I don't want that window on my head. But why you hitting me? I couldn't understand that. I couldn't understand it. I mean, I was a child, and today I'm saying I'm hurting, and you hurt me some more. I don't understand that mathematical equation just wasn't equaling out right, you know. I didn't have two variables, you know. I don't know. Something was wrong with that problem. So that's what I was thinking you all were saying, because I guess because we carried it on into adult, you know, we don't release it or let it go or find some kind of help. So you got grown men and women, you know, we still holding on, like the baby bottle, Linus with his blanket or something. I mean, why don't we let that go? You say you're an adult, you still think like that? So that's what I was thinking as you all were talking about. Why does he's grown now? You know, that was a child. You know, back in the days. So, you know, is that the answer to that question? Why does he fear now? I don't know.
It could be, but the fact is, as you speak about it, you're laughing and your tone is high. So that means that the memory's still there, but it's just refiled in the memory banks.
Yes, sir. Back then it wasn't. I was thinking, you know, my mom have a serious problem to hit somebody and they already hurt.
Let me give you something.
That shame.
I gotta give you something to cry about. I'm already crying. Well, you gonna give me something to cry about? I'm already crying.
Your Lord has forbidden you free. May not.
Oh my goodness.
That
was crazy.
Right now. Because I'm hurt. I never could understand that. Maybe that's from slavery or something.
It might be. That might be left over from slavery.
Okay. Well, that was a good one. That was a good release.
Yeah. That's a good release. You don't know how many attention units you just got back.
Yeah.
Oh, praise be to Allah. Okay.
All right.
Yes, sir. Thank you, beloved.
No problem. All praise due to Allah. So now, the word also means a weathercock, which means a weather vane with a rooster. And you ever seen those roosters at the top of a house, and then whatever direction the wind blows, it spins?
Yes.
Okay. And it also means turncoat. So when you look at the word, I believe the word Pelan has these other meanings. So it describes the characteristics of the reactive mind, does it not?
Yeah.
Because when a person's aberrated, don't they change?
Absolutely.
Don't they travel in whichever way the wind blows? That's called restimulation, right? Okay. So the word Patmos and Pelan up to this point really is describing the reactive mind. So when you're talking about being deceitful and disloyal and changing with direction, this is restimulation and dramatization. So now let's go into what do those terms mean? Restimulation and dramatization. And we're going to look at this from the perspective of the teachings, but we're going to hit the Bible on this as well. So when you deal with Dianetics, you're going to deal with a word called restimulation, but they call it restim. And you come up with the word randomity. And I'm going to explain both of these words. So what he says is this. Restimulation is the reactivation of a past counter effort by the appearance in the organism's environment of a similarity toward the content of the past randomity area. Okay, now let me translate that. And I use example all the time. Remember, watch Sanford and Son? You have Smitty and Hoppy. They come and they talk to Fred and Lamont, and Smitty would always explain stuff using all these, legal terms and whatnot. And Fred and Lamont wouldn't understand anything he was talking about. Then they would look at Hoppy, and Hoppy would explain it in a way that they would understand. You remember that from Sanford and Son?
I do.
Okay. So sometimes
Yes, sir. I remember that.
Okay. So sometimes we have to do this with L. Ron Hubbard because the way he explains things sometimes, this is one of the reasons why some of us started Dianetics and we didn't complete it because we got aggravated. We hit a lot of ridges and it caused us to disperse and we never finished the extension course.
That's correct.
Okay, so those that have not completed the extension course, we hope that this inspires you to pick that back up and complete the extension course. And then we're going to go forward to the other books. But when you're in a situation that's similar to something from your past, you're going to be in present time and past time at the same time. And that's where the aberration takes place. Okay. So have you ever had someone say something to you and it took you back to a previous event and you reacted and cussed this person out? But that person is not the one you really want to cuss out. It was someone from another time period. But at that instant, you were back at that point in time when it originally happened. Has anyone ever experienced that?
Yes.
Yes, sir.
Okay. So that's restimulation. Something in the present has happened and it makes you react in the same way that you reacted when you and I were originally hurt in the past. So we're in the present, but our mind is in the past. So now what are we? We are a double-minded man, which makes us what? Unstable. We're in two different time periods at one time.
I have a question.
Go ahead, Brother Salam.
Sometimes you can hear a record back in the days, and while you're hearing it, you actually go back into time and you actually experience those moments when that record came out.
Yes,
maybe
sir.
with a mate or whatever. Is that being stuck on the track, something like that?
No, that's not being stuck. That's just you're going back on your time track and you're remembering something.
But you actually experience it.
No, you can experience it, but that doesn't mean you're stuck there.
Oh, okay.
Okay. If you started wearing the same clothes you wore in the 70s and you were wearing bell bottoms around the house and you were wearing the same stuff, then Sister Bakia will look at you like, Negro, why are you wearing the suit that you had 20 years ago? That's stuck on the time track.
So what you're trying to tell me, this 8-track that I got in my living room, I'm still stuck on the no.
No, brother, if the 8-track works, brother, it still works. And I'll give you an example. Anytime I speak about life after death, I think about that lecture you gave in Fishkill Correctional Facility back around 2001.
What was that about? What was the lecture on?
Remember, we had the meeting, and after the meeting, we met at the restaurant. And I said, brother, you taught about this. It was like around the time we first met, and you said, brother, if there's nothing after this death, then there's no reason for religion. We should just do whatever you want to do and enjoy life.
Yeah.
You remember that lecture?
Yes, sir.
Okay. So it doesn't mean we're stuck there, but we have that memory.
Yes, sir.
And now it was like, that's you going over 20 years ago, but I still remember us having that conversation. Yeah. See, so our mind traveled 20 years into the past in an instant.
Definitely. Yeah, I see what you're saying.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Go ahead, Sister Patricia.
Yes, sir. Now you're speaking right now. the part that you're speaking on, is that the part that needs to be cleared out of you because it's hindering you to perform and proceed in life the way you should?
No, the memories we have don't hold us back. One of the things that hold us back is if, let's say you hold a grudge with
Pain. Having pain.
If you have pain in the present based on something that happened in the past,
Mhm.
the reason why sometimes you can't get rid of that pain is because you haven't gotten to the root or the cause of it. So we carry the pain. So that's the engram. We have the pain, but because it took place at the time that the reactive mind was clicked on, we have the pain, we have what was said, but we don't have all the details. So we're in the present time, we have emotional pain, but some of the source of that we don't remember. But when you go through the Dianetics, when you go through with an auditor, it allows you to locate specifically what happened.
Yes.
And that's what takes the weight, because when you find specifically what happened, it's like lifting a burden off you. Let's say now you can release it and let it go.
Yes.
Yeah, I've been audited about 8 times.
Mhm.
And I know exactly what you mean by that.
Okay.
Because there was something that was there that I didn't even know was there until I got audited. Then once, like you said, once that it came to the forefront, because it was so deep back in the subliminal mind that I didn't, it was forgotten. And then when I went back and seen some things, I was like, oh, and it was a release. And it was I couldn't explain it or describe it because I didn't know that I can do that. I can go that far back. And, you know, because sometimes your memory only goes so far and it's a reason. Something's blocking it where you can't go all the way back. And then maybe that time period might have been detrimental trauma. You know, I was explaining this just a few minutes ago with my grandchildren. They was asking me the question because they were listening while they were eating, and they like, I don't understand that. So I tried to explain something to them in their terms. They're 8 and 10. And I said, well, something might have happened to you, a long time ago, and it was bad, but it stuck with you for so long, that it caused pain. And you didn't realize it, how much pain, because you live in your life, you're growing, you're developing by Allah's grace, you're getting older, you're living, you're doing things, good, bad, whatever. But there's something always there that seems to not be right with you. And you don't know. And I was so thankful that I started going and did the extension course because I didn't know about this. Now, I don't want to get too far, but let me ask this question because a sister told me, and I'm confused. Now, she said, I hope I'm saying it right, engram and aberrated, is one of them you supposed to been asleep or something when it happened to you?
Not necessarily sleep. It's a moment of unconsciousness.
Right.
Okay, so
which one is that? Is that the engram?
Yeah, the engram is a moment of unconsciousness. So like, for example, if you're in a car accident, okay, let's say you hit your head on the steering wheel, there's going to be you might hit the steering wheel, and then by the time the ambulance gets there, you're looking around. But if you've ever been in an accident, there's a moment in time you're looking around in your mind, you're thinking, what just happened? It's like you checked out for a little bit of time. Okay. Now, for example, when we do car accidents, one of the first things I do is I go up to the car and I try to be very, very careful about what I say to this individual, because I know what I'm saying right now, if they're still somewhat in a daze, my words can become a circuit for them at a later time. But it's a difficult thing to do because I get to the car, I got to find out, what's your name? Are you hurt? Did you hit your head? There's certain things I have to ask. That moment where you're all foggy and you're like looking around like, what just happened? what takes place at that time produces the engram. Okay. Now that engram, just because it starts then, doesn't mean it becomes active. It just, you can live your whole life with an engram and it never becomes active. Okay. But now, if there's emotion involved, that's called a secondary. Okay, that's a secondary engram. But the first engram is a moment of unconsciousness and usually something verbally that's said, that's recorded at that moment in time. Does that make sense?
Yes, sir.
Okay.
I have a question.
Go ahead, Brother Salam.
What about prenatal? A woman is pregnant and she's in a very abusive relationship with a man while she's pregnant.
Mm-hmm.
The man might be saying negative things about her, cursing her out, maybe to the point of hitting her physically.
Mm-hmm.
Do that child in the womb receive an engram?
Yes. And I'll explain it to you the way I remember Sister Ava explaining this a while ago, like during the time of Mind Wars. Now, for those of us who've been around a while, we remember Mind Wars was the series of tapes she did back in the 90s, correct?
Yes, sir. I have.
You have it. Okay.
Yep.
Sister Ava said it like this. She says, when you look at the adults, when the child comes into existence, it comes into existence under an atmosphere of great joy and happiness, if you understand what I'm saying. Okay. But now as the child is forming in the womb, if something happens where the father is abusive towards the mother, that becomes chemistry. That becomes emotion. Emotion is chemistry. And what happens is the child that's forming in the womb cannot discern. And if once that emotion hits the blood, that emotion goes into the developing fetus. So now the child is brought into existence under pleasure and joy. And now it feels like it's an environment where it's no longer wanted. But now here's another thing, because some people say, well, how would the child understand what's being said? The child doesn't understand the words that are being said. It records the sound. But later on in life, if it hears a sound that is the same as what was recorded, that keys in what took place when it was in the womb. So when the child hears, you're no good, obviously the fetus doesn't understand you're no good, but it records that sound. Then the child grows up and someone says, you know, you're no good. Something clicks now, because that's the same thing that was heard in the womb. That engram has just keyed in, means it has turned on.
Yeah.
Okay. So some of the things we suffer from is based on what we've heard prenatally. It's a possibility.
Yeah.
And that's why if you notice, some children, when they're born, some children won't even go to the father.
Wow.
As soon as the father holds the child starts crying. Why? Because the child's like, Nick, bro, you've been cussing me out the whole time. But it wasn't the child, it was the mother. But the child already has developed animosity towards this individual based on the voice.
That's a reality. That's a reality.
Yeah, that's a reality. Okay.
Fear, that fear.
Go ahead, Sister Angela.
That's interesting.
Yes, sir. Two things I wanted to touch on. One, the pleasure moment that the brother brought up. When you go on your time track and have a thought and it makes you feel good. In Dianetics, that's referred to a pleasure moment. And I think when the NOI got into Dianetics, you know, being true to who we are, the cream of the planet Earth, we have taken things a step further, because we know that this world only deals with not even 10% of their brain power. So some of us have begun to look at the time track as a time machine, meaning that if you feel in a certain kind of way, you have the ability to bring your own tone up. You can travel down the time track. So pleasure moments are very important. Exactly. Create our own atmosphere. Also, I just wanted to add to the prenatal engram. It's something when taking the course that L. Ron Hubbard said in the book that 85% of the population was an unwanted pregnancy. I thought that was something, because we wondering why, or we can kind of see the cause of these relationships not meshing or being able to get bonded to stay together. And also you had that shared agreement between the mother and the child, especially if she was hit. If she was unconscious and the child was unconscious in the womb, they have a shared agreement now.
And then he also says in the chapter titled Contagion of Aberration, he says an aberrated father will re-stimulate the mother, and an aberrate mother will re-stimulate the father. So you got two parents that are aberrated, that are constantly re-stimulating one another, and they cause aberration in the children. So some of the characteristics we have right now are based on our mother and our father.
Absolutely.
Okay.
So now I understand.
Say again?
I said, now I understand, because it's a study guide that we were going through. It talks about the mind. I think it was 18, was it 18?
Rising above emotion?
It was dealing with the mindset. And, you know, like you said, when your mindset a certain way, and sometimes you can't comprehend, you know, like you was talking about when you was reading the when you were studying Dianetics, and there's some things that come to you very foreign. And you don't, like you said, some people just stop because they like, oh, I don't know what this means. This don't even sound right, you know. And then you leave it alone, even though that causes more problem and pain with you because you left it alone. Just like we was always told in the nation, get a dictionary, because one word can mess that whole sentence up. If you don't understand that one word, and you don't have the understanding of that word, then you misunderstand what you read. And the misunderstanding is really it's a killer. I mean, you know, because you think you know and you really don't. And so that can be a hindering, and it could be death, because you're going on with something that you have no understanding of. So even in Dianetics, it was, and it still is on some things foreign, but I had learned to parse it and defined it. Then I like, oh, that's what it meant.
The Holy Quran says like this, it talks about those that follow based on conjecture. And conjecture is basically half knowledge. From the perspective of the Bible, it says it like this. It says, the day will come when those would heap upon themselves teachers having itching ears, and they will turn away from the truth and turn onto fables. And then when you look at the word fable means a story that has been made up. So having itching ears, the Bible is saying, we have itching ears, mean tickle my ear. Tell me what I want to hear. Teach me in such a way to justify me doing what I want to do. But as long as I pay my charity, I'm going to be forgiven. That's not how it works.
No, sir.
We can't tithe our way into heaven, as the minister would say.
Yes,
sir. That makes sense?
That makes
sense.
Sir. Yes.
So now what is randomity? Because this word, for some reason, this was a ridge for me for a long period of time. Randomity is an amount of predicted and unpredicted motion that a person has in ratio. I'll give you an example. You have what's called, he says there's three degrees of randomity. You have minus randomity, you have optimum randomity, and you have plus randomity. Now, randomity is just predictable and unpredictable motion, okay? And when he says reactivation of past counter effort by the appearance in the organism environment in regards to randomity, some of us have certain jobs that we do, and there's a certain amount of stress that's involved in those jobs, correct?
That's right.
Okay, we all have different degrees of randomity. For example, not in an arrogant way, but when I used to work as a paramedic and I would show up on scene and there's cars and there's, you know, confusion, you got people bleeding and others, I thrive in environments like that. I can't explain it, I get there and I get into a zone and I just start to do, I know, boom, I get into a zone. We show up to a fire, I get into a zone. Before we get to the fire, you know, that's plus randomity. But for other people, that might be plus randomity. For me, that would be optimum randomity. I can't have a job where I sit at a desk all day. I'll lose my mind. I'm an adrenaline junkie. I need to be moving, popping. I need lights and sirens. I need all those things. Other people might not thrive in that environment. It's neither good nor bad. It's just that we have different levels of predictable and unpredictable behavior that we deal with. I enjoy showing up, not knowing what in the world's going on, because that's just the way my mind works. Other people don't do that. Does that make sense?
Yes.
So when a person's put into an environment where there's too much going on, sometimes we shut right down, don't we?
Yes.
Have you ever got home and with all the stuff going on at work, and you get home and then you get home and the house is a certain thing, and you just say, you know what, I ain't doing nothing. And then you sit down and you just watch TV.
That's
You
that calm.
You're talking to me now. You're talking to me now.
Hitting the potato chips,
No.
hitting the ice cream. There's too much randomity. You know, and for some of us, sometimes we just say, you know, the hell with everything. You tell the children, go in your room, leave me the hell alone. Just let me have some time by myself. I don't feel like talking to no one. People call, I'm not answering the phone. I ain't doing nothing. I just need a moment to myself to gather my thoughts. That's too much randomity. But then if things are too boring, we're like, oh man, I gotta get up and go do something. I'm about to lose my mind. It's too damn quiet in here. That's minus randomity. Does that make sense?
Yes.
But that's how you keep people aberrated. How many times have you gone to the mailbox and you find a whole stack full of mail that means absolutely nothing?
Right.
All of us.
Doesn't that aggravate the hell out of you?
Yeah.
Yeah. And then you go to emails and you just cleared out all your emails, and then the next day there's 100 emails of stuff that means absolutely, and I got to go through all these emails all over again. That's too much. It makes you lose your mind. Okay. So give examples. I put that in there just to remind me. So those are the examples. Some of us, we have different levels of randomity. That's all it means. Okay. So then what he says is, he says, the misalignment through internal and external efforts by other forms of life or the material universe of the efforts of an organism and is imposed on the physical organism by counter efforts in the environment. All that is saying is one way that we stay aberrated is that there's things outside of ourselves that are causing these problems. And these problems are stressing the hell out of us. And because we have these suppressors from the outside, but we can't gather the energy from within to counteract those suppressors. Does that make sense?
Yes.
Okay. If you take a plastic bottle, have you ever sucked all the air out of a plastic bottle and see how the bottle crushes?
Yes.
Okay.
No.
The atmosphere, well, as a child, you know, some of us might have done it. But the atmospheric pressure is 14 and 7/10 pounds per square inch on the inside as well as the outside of that bottle. When you take the atmosphere out of the bottle, you're taking that equalizing pressure, and that causes the bottle to break down. The same thing happens, the minister teaches us that we have pressure on the outside, and if we can't counteract the pressure on the outside with the force that's within us, the pressure on the outside makes us break down. How do you know that you're breaking down? Or how do we know that we're breaking down? When we begin to do things that we know we shouldn't be doing. Why? We're trying to use certain things as a solution for things that we don't have a solution to. Some of us have realized that just by making our prayers, just by making that salat made us feel a lot better.
That's true.
Okay.
Right.
And have you noticed that if you go a day or so without making the prayers, it seems like everything just starts to go wrong. You start getting mad at people and cussing people out, and you know,
Cussing people out.
driving and cutting people off. And I mean, we just start, and all it is I gotta go pray. Gotta go pray.
You got to get back in touch with yourself.
Gotta get back in contact with yourself, exactly. So when you look at what happened on Patmos, what happened? There was a misalignment. Yakub put this death sentence on all the labor and said, this is what you're gonna do, and if you don't do it, you're gonna die. Okay. So when you look at a misalignment of the external influences on us, then basically that is the definition for devilishment or tricknology. Does that make sense?
Mm-hmm.
Telling lies, stealing, and how to master the original man. That's the paragraph up. Yes.
Okay. We on this island, and you said that was like a death sentence that he gave to all those laborers.
When you look at, and I'm gonna show you the lesson, but when you deal with the birth control law, everyone that failed to follow the law 100%, death was the penalty.
Okay.
And that's in the lesson.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, death.
Right.
So basically, and we're gonna go a little bit deeper into, there's a death penalty. That's what you call enforced ARC, but we'll get to it we might be able to get to it. I'm only gonna go for a couple more minutes.
Okay, I'm following you. I just want to make
That's
sure.
fine. Go ahead, Sister Patricia.
Brother Lukman, was you saying that this is a technical, you passed the slide. Are you saying that's what was, you said this is a technical definition for devilishment? I gotta put my glasses on. Tricknology. Are you saying that's what what's that, resitum and randomy is?
Basically, where it says the misalignment through internal, external efforts, you're dealing with randomity. And what that is you have individuals when you have a government that keeps its people under constant stress, okay? You constantly put them under counter efforts. That means you're keeping the population re-stimulated. Then you're keeping people in a state that will facilitate their addiction. Does that make sense?
Yes.
Okay, so we're constantly being re-stimulated. And then when you put things on TV and then you put things on the radio, we're in an environment where we're inundated constantly with counter efforts or suppressors. That definition is the Dianetic definition, but really it's describing an aspect of what tricknology is.
Okay.
Okay. Our lessons say tricknology is telling lies, stealing, and how to master the original man. From a Christian standpoint, we know that that's just the way the devil works. Okay. That's how the devil works. But when you understand that the devil is not a person with some, like brother Dr. Khalid would say, it's not a man with some red pantyhose and a pitchfork. This devil is something that exists within us. So we can't say the devil made me do it and use that as an excuse.
Yes, sir.
Because the devil in me made me do it. I have to take ownership for it. Now, I might do certain things based on my aberration, but I can't do something wrong and then blame it on someone else. You know?
Yes, sir.
You know, Adam blamed Eve, but the minister said, you know, he said, if you want to look at it technically, God gave Adam the instruction. He didn't give Eve instruction. So Adam, you can't blame it on Eve because the Lord told you what to do and what not to do. He didn't tell Eve.
You should have been stronger.
We can't use that. So dramatization is to repeated action what has happened to one in experience. That's a basic definition of it, but much more important, it's a replay now of something that happened then. So dramatization is something takes place now, you react to it the same way you reacted to it back then. Does that make sense?
Mm-hmm.
And now here's what happens. You duplicate what's called the engrammic content in entirety or in part in present time, and you take on the characteristic of the individual that is in the engram. Now, if you and I were abused, so if we were abused, there's a possibility that we might become abusive towards other people. If we're put in a certain situation and it triggers us, we begin to act out on other people what was acted out on us. Does that make sense?
That's true. Yes, sir.
Okay. That's called dramatization. When you look at Legion, okay, Book of Mark, chapter 5, it said when Jesus found Legion, he was cutting himself with stones, living in the tombs. So what was he doing? He was abusing himself. Why? What is your name? He said, my name is Legion because we are many. It means Legion had a lot of aberrations, which would imply that Legion endured a lot of abuse. And then when you read the story of Legion, it said that Jesus was able to take the devil out of Legion and put it in the swine. And then when the next time they saw Legion, they said he was in a new garment at the right hand of Jesus in his right mind. Okay, so Legion represents you and I. We are Legion. Don't you have some voices in your head that make you do crazy things to yourself?
Yes.
You know, we all do. With Dianetics, you know, here we can say that the Jesus represented the minister, and he gave us a tech to remove the demons from us, so that we can get back to our right mind now. Does that make sense?
Yes.
Sir.
So when you look at dramatization and taking on someone else's behavior, Allah says in the Holy Quran, he says, you know, we take Allah's color, and who is better than Allah at coloring, and we are his worshipers. But when you look at the word color in Arabic, it means to take on the character or nature. So we're supposed to take on the character of God. Is that right?
Yes, sir.
Didn't Jesus have the character of his Father?
Yes, sir.
Okay. So now if we're supposed to take on the color of God, then whose color do we take on when we disbelieve?
Satan.
That's called dramatization.
Mm-hmm.
We take on the characteristics of individuals from our past. Okay.
So in order to be clear, that means we have overcome the devil.
To be clear, we have found all those, our lessons say we have found four, you know, it says we gotta murder those four devils. Okay.
Yes.
I look at Patmos and I look at the minister, the doctor, the nurse, and the cremator as four devils. And then we find those four devils, we can go back into our time track and find instances that cause this pain and discomfort. Now we have the memory of them, but we don't have the emotional pain that's connected to it.
Okay.
Okay. It doesn't mean we can't come up with new aberrations, but at least our time track up to this point has been fixed now. We're in our right mind again. And those things don't affect us anymore. Okay. Can you give me like maybe just 10 more minutes?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Okay, when you look at the island, it says on the island of Patmos, an island is an isolated group or area. It's surrounded by water. Now, again, I was looking at this and the thought of a cyst came to my mind. What is a cyst? It's a closed sac having distinct membrane and developing abnormally in a cavity or structure of the body. So a cyst in the body takes place when there's chemicals or toxins in the body. The body gathers those toxins in an area and puts it in a cyst and takes it out of circulation so that it doesn't affect the body. Does that make sense?
Wow.
Okay. So the body can't get the toxins out, so it puts it in a cyst. And hopefully that cyst, it pushes the toxins up to the surface and then it pops. That's another way it gets the toxins out of the body. Okay. The skin is the largest organ of the body, and sometimes our systems are so clogged up that it can't eliminate the toxins through our urinary system or our digestive system. So the body uses the respiratory system or the lungs to get toxins out, and it uses the skin to get toxins out. And that's why some people have very, very bad breath or they have very bad eczema. It's the body's way of relieving the body of toxins. So the bad breath doesn't originate in the mouth, it originates in the digestive system. Okay. And the skin problems we have is the body's way of getting toxins out of the body. Okay.
Acne.
If we have very bad acne, is because the body is trying to get rid of the toxins, but we're probably not drinking enough water, or we're eating too much and we're overworking the body, and the body cannot eliminate the toxins fast enough, so it pushes it out through the skin.
Oils.
And oils, yes, definitely. Okay.
Where does petechiae come from?
Petechiae.
Be a little more specific.
You know, I have a red spot on my arm, and I was always told that it was a birthmark, but the doctor had told me that it was a petechiae. And I have one, a small one, just like on my neck area, like I don't know.
Have you had it your whole life?
Yeah, that's what they.
Isn't that a hematoma?
I have one on my arm. I've had it my whole life. And my mother used to tell me that because when she was carrying me, she craved cheeseburgers with extra ketchup. That it's the ketchup. It's a red mark I have on my arm. I've had it my whole life. That's I don't think that's not toxins. That's just a birthmark.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, that might be that's a little different.
All right.
But that was the story my mother told me when I was little. It's red and it's almost shaped like a heart on my arm.
Oh, okay. I don't know. Mine just look a little. It's red, but it's not. I don't know. It looks really red. That's all.
Okay.
And I was told that it was petechiae, but I don't know.
It's another name for that. That's
What I'm thinking of is when you have abscesses, or you have cysts, or you have pimples, anything that's producing like pus. That's some of that's toxicity coming out of the body.
Oh, okay.
Some of them just skin, and then some of people have the as red and to be brown as just hanging. Just the formation of the skin. They talked about that. I can't remember the name of it, but that right there, it's like a mold, not mold, but you know the pieces of your skin just hang.
Yeah.
It might have been there for a long time. You never paid attention because it was smaller, and as you get older, it seems like it's getting bigger.
Yeah. Yes, ma'am. Yes, ma'am. It does. I just thought I would ask. Thanks.
So on an island, so this island, we're going to use it as a demo kit, and then we're going to kind of land this plane. The cyst also was defined as a resistant cover about a parasite produced by the parasitic host. So sometimes a parasite will get into a system, it encases itself, and it can produce a cyst. The engram is like a mental or an emotional cyst.
Okay.
So when you look at as a cyst is a sac that contains toxins and is filled with fluid to keep it separate from the rest of the body. An engram contains toxic emotions and is filled with what's called charge, if that makes sense. Okay. And the charge, we know from Dianetics, we know that charge is basically a tier. So when you go to Dianetic auditing and you revisit that situation, it causes you to produce a lot of crying. Does that make sense?
Yes, sir.
Okay. And the crying is healing because the chemical that's produced in the body under stressful situations, when that hormone accumulates in your body over a period of time, it begins to produce, it declines the immune system and produces the medical problems that we suffer from. So some of us are sick, not because it just runs in our family. Right. Some of us are sick because we have an overabundance of this stress hormone in the body. And the more of that stress hormone that you and I can get out, our body will begin to heal itself. And that chemical comes out during crying. It's found in tears of grief. Okay. That's why auditing is a wonderful thing, because for those of us who ever had the auditing and you had one of them real good snotting and crying where you used half
Yes,
the
sir.
next, you feel wonderful afterwards.
4 hours.
Wow. Yeah.
Labor.
Go ahead, Brother Timothy.
Yeah, I wanted to ask, like, I know diabetes is like a disease that we suffer from a lot as Black people, just in general, a lot of people do. I know that's kind of could be food related. Is there anything could be tied to that engrammatically? And the other thing I wanted to say was when you were talking about earlier about Eve, I remember the minister kind of relieving the woman of that burden of Eve. And he said that Eve could represent the evening, a period of darkness, which is, I took as, being absent of light, absent of God, where we commit that sin. It's a period of darkness in the mind.
Yes, sir. Let's deal with the food. Because what's different between a person who smokes cigarettes, a person that uses opioids, and a person who overeats? All three of them are addicts.
Right.
All of us have our addictions. So we might think, well, since mine is legal, it's not an addiction. No, it's still an addiction. We're still a drug user if we're eating to relieve our emotional pain. So the diabetes is just the result of our eating improperly. And then there's emotional things, stress things that could contribute to that. So the Most High Elijah Muhammad says in How to Eat to Live, if we just stop eating sugar, then our body will balance itself out, and you can remove sugar diabetes from the body. But sugar, my name is Lukman, and I'm an addict. Sugar is one thing I'm fighting with right now.
Yes, sir.
I need to go to Sugar Anonymous meetings or something, but that's my problem. Is sweets. Sweets has got me. That's my kryptonite. What? it is what it is. So, but when you understand that the molecule for sugar and the molecule for, I can't remember what drug it is, cocaine, they're very, very similar. You won't see Bro Lukman snorting sugar anytime soon, but you might see me eating a couple of donuts every now and then, but that's what I'm wrestling.
Yeah, it's one compound off.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah. So if you want a good book, get a book called Sugar Blues.
So when you eat sugar, you get a high, you get a rush.
Yes, when you eat sugar, because really, when you look at, we're trying to get what's called the dopamine effect, and sugar triggers the same places that the drugs trigger. So sometimes we eat the sugar because we're looking for that chemical rush of dopamine. Okay. What he says, and this is why the word insisted comes to my mind. In Dianetics, he says the life force apparently gets dammed up at these points in life, meaning the points in life where we've been abused or we've had to suffer, or we've gone through emotional pain or trauma, life force gets stuck there. So some of us are 40, 50, and 60, but there's a certain part of our mind that's still 8, 9, and 10 years old. We're stuck there. He says there may be enormous quantities of that life force available, but some of it becomes suppressed into a lost engram. After that, the person does not seem to possess as much life, as much fluid vitality as before. This may be not emotion, but life itself. The mind then has below it, as in a cyst, a great quantity of sorrow or despair. The more of these charges exist in such an encysted state, the less free are the emotions of the individual. So what he's saying is some of us have suffered so much, we carry this suffering around with us, that our life, it's not emotion, it's life force that's trapped. So for some of us, and I'll include myself, for some of us, it's hard to lose weight. We work out, we try to eat correctly, we can't get the weight off. It's not that the weight is the problem. The weight that we carry is symbolic of the weight we carry in our mind. And for some of us, if we can let go of the pain in our mind, we'll begin to shed the pounds that we're trying to shed, if that makes any sense.
Absolutely.
Okay.
Absolutely.
Okay. So now, is there a marriage? Is there a marriage? Is there ARC? Well, can we therefore come to the conclusion that the island of Pelan or Patmos could be used as a demo kit to describe some of the characteristics of the reactive mind? Have we made those connections?
I have. Yes, sir.
Okay. Can we also come to the conclusion that we could use this lesson to study self and gain a better understanding of our own aberration? Can we do that?
Yes, sir.
Yes.
Okay. So that's the end of part 1. I'm only going to touch this other part briefly because it's past time now. In our lesson, it talks about the 4 laborers. Okay, and this is what we'll cover, God willing, next Sunday. In question number 28 of Lost Found Muslim lesson number 2, it says, and what kind of rules and regulations, including all laws enforced while manufacturing the devil? It says, now I said, well, what is the significance of the word enforced with regards to Dianetic tech? What could be the relationship between each of the 4 laborers and the characteristics of the reactive mind? What could be the relationship between each of the 4 laborers and our time track? So next week, what we're going to go into, we're going to look at these 4 laborers from the lesson and how they share characteristics with the reactive mind. But we're going to look at how, if we have a Patmos in ourselves and we have 4 laborers in our own mind, they could possibly represent 4 people from our time track. Does that make sense?
Yes.
Sir.
So when you look at the law and birth control, it says next, Yaqub gave his people the law and birth control to be enforced while manufacturing the devil. That was to destroy the alike and save the unlike, which means kill the black babies and save the brown babies. This law was given to the doctors, the ministers, the nurses, and the cremator. This lesson has ARC with the tech of Dianetics when studied as a demo kit for the reactive mind. So what did the law of birth control say? So when you look at birth, birth is the emergence of a new individual from the body of its parent, correct?
Yes.
Okay. It represents a beginning or a start. So it also means a person's origin, descent, or ancestry. So when you look at the law of birth control, it's to keep something from coming to birth. Look at it from Revelations 12. Doesn't it say that there was a woman that was in heaven with 12 stars and a crown, and she was standing on the moon, and the dragon was waiting for a child to come to birth?
Yes.
Okay. On one level, we could say that there's something that's about to come to birth from you and I as direct descendants from God. And this world doesn't want us to come into a knowledge of who we really are. So as you've noticed, if you look over the past 5 or 10 years, as the levels of spirituality has increased, hasn't the level of TV and all the stuff on TV, has that not declined and become disgusting and terrible?
Yes, sir.
Okay, so their job is to keep us aberrated. God comes to free our mind. Does that make sense?
Yes, sir.
Okay. So when something is enforced, it means to carry out effectively. What does enforce mean in Dianetics? And then this is where we're going to end it. How does it relate to Patmos? Enforced ARC. So A stands for affinity. Enforced affinity is the demand on the individual that he experience or admit affinity when he has not felt it. People lower tone than the pre-clear commonly command his affinity. And when affinity is given but not felt, locks are formed which are quite interpolative should engrams underlie such an enforcement. What does that mean? Some of us have supervisors that are in positions of power over us, and they're as dumb as a box of rocks, their tone is lower than ours, and we have to act like we like these people when we really don't even care for them, correct?
That is accurate, yes.
So now we have enforced affinity because they're the supervisor, and we really want to tell them what we really think. But sometimes we might not be able to do that because we might lose our job. So we are almost forced to behave a certain way in order to maintain our employment. Does that make sense?
Yes.
By us biting our tongue, that causes interbulation. And as I was going through this is dealing with the communication part, it reminds me of the minister saying, I want to be your friend. But if to be your friend means I have to do X, Y, and Z, yours is a friendship that I don't want. Have you heard the minister say that?
That's right. That's right.
So you're not going to enforce ARC on the minister.
That's right.
Because his thought is, if it's just me and Allah, then that's all I need. And the message and that messenger, that's all I need.
Right.
So people in power are often lower toned than we are, yet they rule over us. When you look at people in Washington, these individuals are in positions of power and they don't have the common sense that God gave them.
Yeah, we saw that with Bush.
Exactly. And this is why their whole world is coming to an end now, because they don't deserve to be in the position they're in. They're not qualified to rule anymore. Well, they're never qualified to rule, but they had to get their 6,000 years. Does that make sense?
Yes, sir.
Okay. So when we have to fake friendship, it can cause an aberration. That's why, to me, it's best to just tell people what you really think.
Yes.
You know, I try not to mix words. If I don't like you, I'm gonna tell you, I just don't like you. You know, sometimes it's good. Allah says in the Holy Quran, speak straight words. Okay. Enforced reality is the demand on the individual that he experience or admit reality when he has not felt it. Anytime a person is made to agree by force or threat or deprivation to another's reality, and yet does not feel that reality himself, an aberrative condition exists. Yeah, just growing up in this educational system, we've had enforced reality. Because none of this stuff makes sense. And the history, you know, some people say the history would be different when you have a hunter and a lion. You know, if the lion wrote its history, it would have a total different story to tell. We talk about Columbus. Well, if the history was written by the Native Americans, the history sounds different, doesn't it?
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
What about the enforcement of vaccines?
Well, let's let the offspring or the descendants of the Tuskegee experiment write that history and then see if it's the same story.
That's right. That's
You know, the history of the vaccines, when it's written by other doctors, would let us know that we shouldn't be taking it. Okay. So now, when we have to agree to something by force, that causes aberration. But now, that's the same definition for the word compulsion when it exists on the inside. Does that make sense?
Yes, sir.
Do any of us have any compulsions?
Yes, sir.
Say anything. I say yes. I have compulsions.
Yes, sir.
So from the Bible standpoint, that's the double-minded man that's unstable in all his ways. Why? He's at war with another force in his own mind. That's Book of Romans chapter 7. The law of my members is at war with the law of my mind. It makes me do the things which I really don't want to do. That's the double-minded man. That's aberration. Same thing. Dianetics in Romans chapter 7 are in harmony with that. Enforced communication. The demand on the individual that he experience or admit communication when he has not felt it. It's funny because enforced ARC, when it comes to my mind, let's go back in time a little bit. Remember Aunt Bunny? Eddie Murphy?
Oh, yeah.
Don't give your Aunt Bunny a kiss. She got a mustache. You don't remember Aunt Bunny?
Remember that.
You don't remember Eddie Murphy when you talk about Aunt Bunny and Goonie Google? You don't remember that back in the 80s?
No.
Oh man, am I older than everyone in the room? Well, no, Brother Salam's here. I'm not Brother.
Eddie Murphy Raw.
Yeah, it was. I think it was Raw. He was forced to kiss his aunt.
Right.
His aunt had a
Yes,
mustache,
sir.
and he didn't want to kiss her.
Yeah, I
Enforced-
vaguely remember that.
Okay. I thought I was the only one that remembered Eddie Murphy.
Details.
So enforced communication is productive of all manner of aberration and physiological changes in the individual. So when you enforce communication, you're forcing people to say things which they don't believe. So what happens is when you enforce something on someone, you also inhibit something. So if I force you to say what I want you to say, then I'm not allowing you to really speak what's really on your mind.
Right.
Okay, Sister Shed, I saw you pop up there for a quick second. You got something?
No, I just wanted to say that parents enforce adults do this to children all the time.
Yes.
They say to the child, go kiss, go give them a hug, go kiss such and such, and go say goodbye. The child don't want to do it, and it's enforced.
Yeah, and sometimes the child has they can read the energy more than the parent can, and
Correct.
they don't want to go near that person because that person, their aura is off.
That's right.
I don't want nothing to do with that person. They ain't looking at me right, you know.
Correct.
So when you look at Pelan, when you look at how Yaqub had the law on birth control and the death penalty, wasn't that enforced ARC on the laborers?
Yes.
Okay. How many of those doctors really didn't want to do that? But they didn't want to die, so they went along with it, right?
Yeah. Yes, sir.
How many of those nurses didn't want to stick the needle in the brain of the baby? Right? How many of those ministers didn't want to carry out the instructions? How many of those cremators didn't want to take the black baby that was still alive and burn it alive? But if they didn't carry it out, what happened? They would be killed.
Yeah, it makes me wonder, Brother Lukman, because they all were from the 30%, the dissatisfied, right? All of the people who went with Yaqub were from the 30%, the dissatisfied from the holy city Mecca, right?
I believe so.
Yes.
85%.
They were, it was 30% at that time
Because
from my
the dissatisfaction.
the 30% dissatisfaction. So it makes me wonder, when you just said what you said, it makes me wonder if they didn't want to do what Yaqub was instructing them to do, did they say, wow, we had it pretty good back there in Mecca. I wish I was back there in Mecca.
Yeah.
You know?
Yes, ma'am.
Wow.
And we'll end it. We'll end it on this note. This was the law. It says all nurses, doctors, and ministers, Yaqub put them under a death penalty who failed to carry out the law as it was given to them. Also, the cremator who would burn the black babies when the nurse brought it to him. But now let me look at this one last thing, and here's where we end it. Could we say, going back to where we originally started from, where Jesus was tempted in the wilderness, didn't Satan try to enforce ARC on Jesus?
Yep.
Yeah.
Yes.
He tried to enforce communication. He tried to enforce affinity, and he tried to enforce reality. When we fall victim to our own low desires, isn't the devil doing the same thing within us that the devil on the outside does? This little voice in our head is trying to enforce ARC. It's whispering to us, whispering of the slinking devil. So that's the communication who whispers into the hearts of men. There's the affinity. So if he's communicating and he's speaking into the heart, then he's speaking to us with regards to something we have an emotional contact with regards to a certain reality where there's agreement. Could we say that the whispering devil is using ARC?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay.
Sir.
Okay.
Is this devil a separate entity within the human being, or is it a part of the human being?
A part of the human being.
The way that L. Ron Hubbard explains it, if you go further in the text, he begins to use the term genetic entity, which he says is the physical body. So the body almost has a mind of its own, meaning the body is a collection of recordings of everything that has taken place in our time track. So we are like Legion. We have all these voices in our head right now. Some of these voices are things we heard prenatally. Some of these things are things we heard at 1 and 2. Remember, the time track records everything. Allah says in the Holy Quran, you'll be given a book. And in that book, we have recorded everything.
Yes.
Does that make sense?
Yes.
Yes.
So everything is there. And it's certain recordings that's causing our aberration, because those recordings are connected to stuff that has emotion, and that is connected to the physical body. The true essence of who we are is the life force that exists in the body. Does that make sense?
Yes.
So the life force doesn't have it, but the physical body does. So we were born to, I believe that the reason why we're born is to master this physical body.
Yes.
This is a test. You want to say you're God? Okay, defeat the devil. Master this universe. And when you can master this universe, then you can begin to master the universe outside of self. We got to become God over this. I, self, Lord, and master, as they used to say. We got to master this.
Yes.
And that's why lesson 38, the 38th lesson says, then why did God make devil? To show forth and prove he's all wise and righteous. He can make a devil which is weak and wicked, give him power to rule the earth, and then destroy him in one day without falling victim to the devil's civilization. That's how we prove we're God. One of the first things is we got to prove we can master this physical body we're in.
Yeah.
Yes, sir.
And with God's help, next week, I hear Roger. I hear Roger in the background. Y'all know who Roger is, right?
It was a computer love.
Computer love. Roger back. So,
Brother Lupon,
yes.
Cipher this for me. I was on social media, and there was this older lady, and I clicked into it, and she's a Black lady. She's 90-some years old. They say, you know, she speaks. Her family got her, you know, on the camera and speaking and everything, and she cusses really bad, right? I mean, she used profanity, ridiculous, and she's 90-some years old. And after I got done listening to her, later on that day, it's like those words is in my head that she was using all the time. I said, oh my goodness, how did I hold on to that and not the part, you know, it just stuck in my head. And I was like, and I'm hearing those words over in my head like that. And I was like, okay, I can't look at her on social media because her profanity is sticking in my head. And so I was like, okay, so what is that about?
Some shows are like fast food for the mind. How many of us would be willing to go to Burger King or Mickey D's or whatnot and order fast food? You know, it might taste good, but it's not good for the body, correct?
Mm-hmm.
Certain things on TV are not meant for us to watch. Because remember, if we're in that 20-year time period where our mind is going to be made clean, you know, if a child comes in and puts on their Sunday school clothes and then they go out to play and get it all muddied up, wouldn't you be mad at them for going out with the new clothes to get muddied up?
Mm-hmm.
Then what sense would it make for us to try to make our mind clean and then we keep going back to the mud? It's unfortunate we live in this society and we have to live, but we got to strive to be in the world but not of it. Certain shows, I don't have cable TV. I refuse to get it. I don't want to watch it. And I hate to say it like this, and I don't want to offend anyone, but everything now is centered around homosexuality.
It is.
Right.
My thing is this, I'm not going to judge anyone. I'm not here to judge.
But the messenger said that the devil is in our home and it's through the television.
But just like I don't want to see a man and a woman kissing each other like that on TV. So I'm gonna be equal across the board. But there's just certain things I don't want to see, and everything you turn on now is going in that direction.
Brother Luke, when you hear me?
Yeah, I hear you now. Go ahead.
You know, in the Quran, the law tells us when an evil person come by, give them the green alarm and keep walking. I'm paraphrasing. It's the same way when we hear people saying things and it sticks into our mind, we have to learn to get rid of it. It's like when December 25th come by, we start hearing those Christmas songs, and before we know it, we start singing them songs. Is that right?
Yes.
Yeah.
Right.
It's a program. So when the sister was talking about the lady was cursing and using profanity, she was picking up stuff that maybe she in her younger life, like we all did, hear our parents cursing, our grandparents cursing, and it stuck to her. And the rest of the day, she had that on her mind. So we have to learn how to get rid of stuff like that, not even associate ourselves with hearing that kind of language.
There's two ayats that pop in my head from the Quran. One where it says when you're in the company of individuals that are speaking about things against your religion, remove yourself until they speak about other things.
Yeah, that's what I was talking about. Yeah,
that's one verse. And then Surah 53, ayat 32, it says, those who avoid the great sins and the indecencies, but the passing idea.
Yes.
Surely thy Lord is liberal and forgiving. So basically saying is we're not held accountable for the idea unless we act on it.
Yes.
Because crazy stuff is going to come to our mind because we live in a crazy society. And if we can let that thought come and go and not hold on to it, but when we hold on to an idea, that's when it begins to formulate into an activity. When we start turning stones to bread, that's when, the activity will come after that.
That's right.
Okay? So, all right, family, I've held you long enough. It's been 2.5 hours, even though it only seems like it's been 20 minutes. Does anyone have any closing questions, comments, thoughts, concerns, suggestions, or corrections before we close out the meeting? Sister Catherine, did we hit the nail on the head tonight?
Yes, you did. I was actually trying to write all of the information down because I found it to be a very good resource, but I couldn't get everything down. So I just work with what I have, but
no, Sister Catherine, put your email in the chat, and I'll be more than happy to send you a copy of it. I've recorded it, so you can have a copy, watch it at your own pace, and that way you can write down everything you need to write down.
Okay, all right. Where you said put it in the chat? Where would I find the chat?
Okay, if you look in the bottom of the screen, you see where it says chat? There's a little window that says chat down at the bottom.
I see mute, stop video, share participants, and more. Let me see.
Click more. Click more.
Click more.
Okay,
what does it say?
more. The raising of the hand. Disconnect audio meeting settings. And
so you don't have chat on yours?
No, I don't find it. I'm sorry.
Okay, well, here's what I'm gonna do. What is your if you don't mind, what is your email address?
Cat 31063 @gmail.com.
That's CAT 31063 @gmail.
Yes.
Okay, I'm gonna send you an email just to make sure. I'm gonna send you a test message, and when you respond, and I can make sure it's you, then I'll send you a copy of tonight's Zoom meeting. That way you'll have the whole video.
Oh, thank you so very much.
You're very welcome.
Much appreciated. Thank you.
And Sister Catherine.
Yes.
You wanted brother to add you to the mailing list so you can receive the Zoom invitations to the classes, right?
Yes, I'd love to come to the math class. How much is that class?
The math class on Wednesday, there's no cost for the math class. If you want to do individual, that way it can just be a focused math class on just the individual, then we can always discuss that. But the math class on Wednesdays, I don't charge anything.
Okay, and how what is the time?
That's Wednesday at 10 a.m.
10 a.m.
Mhm.
How long is it in session? 10
We usually
a.m.
go from like maybe 10 to 11:30, 12 o'clock.
Okay, 10. Okay,
Now, if you care to give a donation, but no, I don't ask anything for a Wednesday.
Okay.
Yeah, I do that because doing these classes is my therapy. Because when I'm going and I'm studying, I'm self-auditing as I'm going through, and then I'm sharing with the believers what I'm finding. But this is my medicine as well.
Oh, okay. Thank you so very much. I
Oh,
appreciate
you're very
that.
welcome. Yes, ma'am.
Thank you.
Anyone else? Going once, going twice. And I think Sister Shayla is did I possibly mention the mathematics? I don't mean to put you on the spot, but no. Well, I'll say this. The individuals that are involved in the math class have been we do we look for what's called mathematical engrams, meaning sometime for us in our childhood, we encountered in the classroom either teachers or individuals that made us feel a certain way. And as a result, as Black people, we have avoided mathematics and science. So what we do is the math class is not just math. We still use the Bible and we still use the Dianetics. But what we do is we show how we can get past these mental blocks that we have. And we have individuals that feel as though they can do math, and then within a week or an hour, they're actually doing algebra. I won't mention any names, but there's some people that have been doing algebra when they didn't know they could do algebra. And I won't mention any names, but there are some people that have been excelling greatly in mathematics.
Great. Yeah, I'll learn how to do that.
And can I share one thing about mathematics?
Go ahead, Brother Salam.
One day I was in your home with you, and your home was cold. But we was dealing with a business venture that we was on, and you took me to the board, and you was dealing with how much money we can make.
And you got real warm, didn't you?
Brother, I got so warm. I said to you, I thought you had no oil in your house. When you start showing me the money that we was gonna make, I got warm. I said, I thought you didn't have no oil in your tank. That was a wonderful experience, brother. The math have energy.
Yes, it does.
They have energy and life, and it made me actually feel warm. I never forget that.
It probably took about 8 minutes and 20 seconds, brother.
Yes.
All right, family. If that is it, we will go ahead and close out in prayer.
All right.
Brother Salam, can you take us home, brother?
Yes, sir.
If anyone wants a copy, just put your name in the chat, and I'll send this as a link. That way you can view it at your own convenience. All right, yes, sir. Okay.
Bismillah Rahman Rahim. Walas innal insana lafikos. Ella ladina amanu alamilos salihati what was so bihak, what was so bisaba. In the name of Allah, the Beneficent, the Merciful, by the token of time, surely man is lost, except for those who believe and do good, and exalt one another truth, and exalt one another the patience. Amen.
Amen. Beloved family, I know it's late. There's another Zoom meeting that's going on currently where they deal with closing the gap Does anyone here have that link by any chance?
No.
Send it to me, Lukeman.
Can somebody put it up?
Yeah, I tell you what, give me 1 second. I'll put it up. That way, if you wish to go to the other Zoom meeting, you can go there as well. Give me 1 second. I'm pulling it up now. It should be here. Let's see, where's it at? Where's it at? Where's it at? There you are here.
Is that with Tuquana or Tawan? What's her name? Tawan?
Brother Tuquan. Yes, I got it right here. This is the link. So if you want to go to that Zoom link, they usually go from 8 to 9. I know we kind of went over today, but so all right, family. God willing, I'll see you on Wednesday morning. May Allah continue to bless us all. Assalamu alaikum.
Walaikum salam, sir. Thank you.
Thank you.
Sister Shayla. Bye, Sister Shayla.
Oh, that was Kathy.
Yeah. Hi, Sister Shayla.
Hi.
Hi. Bye, sweetie.
I see you. Wow.